We are one step closer to answering the age-old question, are we alone in the universe? NASA announced the discovery of 7 Earth-sized planets around a star about 40 light years away from Earth. That translates to 235 trillion miles. All 7 could have water, which means the key to life is like ours there. 3 of the planets fall in the habitable zone. That's where liquid water on the surface is most likely.
NASA has hit the jackpot this time. Okay, the Holy Grail is to find an Earth-like twin in outer space. We have now taken a giant step toward that, to find another planet in outer space, perhaps with oxygen, perhaps with liquid oceans, perhaps with radio transmissions, perhaps some life form.
Not just one.
That's right. We have 7 possible candidates. This is unprecedented. Astronomers are just jumping up and down right now.
How did they actually find these?
Well, it's very difficult because these planets cannot be seen directly. However, when they go in front of the mother star, it dims the light from the mother star, and that's how we do it. We look for periodic dimming of stars, and that is a characteristic of a planet moving in front of the star.
I have to admit to you, in the beginning, I had no interest really at all in the year 2012. I just didn't care anything about it. To me, it was just a big New Age phenomenon that was unfolding around the end of a Mayan calendar, which I also couldn't figure out why I would care anything about. But then something happened. I was doing research on something else, and I came across this book, the Book of the Kumiel, the Council Book of the Yucatec Maya. This interested me because the Yucatec Maya had converted to Christianity following the Spanish invasion. And they still technically refer to their prophet as the Chilambalam, but the Chilambalam had converted to Christianity. And the Chilambalam started developing ideas around the Christian final judgment. And he came to believe that the prophets of his culture, who were forecasting a future in which their God would return, was a false setup for the Christ of Christianity and his appearing, and that something was going to precede it. In our theology, we would understand that entirely, wouldn't we? The coming of the Antichrist, a time of great deception. I thought, uh-oh, I have stumbled into some deep occult work here. And these guys are scheming something. And whether I believe it or not, they believe it. And because they believe it, it can affect the course of our nation. It can affect the course of law. The Maya themselves, the ancient Maya, what they believe is going to happen at the end of the Mayan calendar, at the end of the 13th Baktun that ends in the month of December 21st in the year 2012, when their calendar ends and then rolls over and starts again. And Monument 6 tells us that when that moment arrives, their underworld god, Bolon Yakte Ku, is going to return, followed by 9 support gods that represent the planets in our planetary system. And I don't know where Noah went, but Noah, it sounds just like they're describing an invasion of Earth, like a giant UFO, because all of a sudden something descends very rapidly upon the Earth. Is that going to happen? I don't know, but I know that the Bible tells me men's hearts are going to fail them for fear for seeing those things that are coming upon the earth. And there is a time of great deception and a time of lying wonders that could cause the world to accept what? An intergalactic Messiah, the return of the gods, the return of the Sumerian god, something that could be extraordinary, beyond our comprehension, that could cause the masses of the world to panic and fall down in subservience to what we think of as the coming of the Antichrist. Anyway, that's what Monument 6 says. So I started looking into other cultures. I wanted to know, is it just Mesoamerican? I found out that the Hindus had focused on the same thing in the Hindu Kali Yuga calendar. This is the age of the male male demon. And it ends in the year 2012, and they too saw that the earth would go through catastrophic changes. Then I found here in the early Americas, 200 years ago, the Cherokee Indian tribe, in a whole series of apocalyptic prophecies, they too began to prophesy. And as a result, even the Cherokee Indians set their calendar to end in the year 2012 with the return of their feathered rattlesnake god. These are called the Cherokee Star Constellation prophecies, or more commonly the Cherokee rattlesnake prophecies. And here's another thing for you investigators that like looking into this stuff. I want somebody to answer me why all of these cultures who are focused on the year 2012 and the return of their gods want to typify their god as a great dragon that has the power of flight, has the power to move through the air. The Bible talks to me too about a power of the air, and also refers to him as a dragon. And all of these cultures, the Cherokee see a flying rattlesnake god who's going to return. The Mayans see Kukulkan. The Aztecs see Quetzalcoatl, their feathered serpent god coming back from the heavens. And furthermore, as you'll see in a moment, on the Great Seal of the United States, the prophecy on the Great Seal speaks of the return of the god Saturn's reign over the earth and his son Apollo upon the earth. And if you look at ancient depictions of Saturn, he is pulled in his chariot through the sky by two winged dragons. All of this occultism looking to the year 2012 and somehow tying in to that day. And adopt Mesoamerican beliefs. I wondered, did they intentionally incorporate those prophetic ideas of Maya Aztec with their own Gnostic and Rosicrucian and mysticism, or were they unknowingly influenced by the occult power that seemed to be operating behind so many other ancient societies? Societies separated by time and distance, some of them by hundreds of years, some of them by thousands of years, some of them by hundreds of miles, some by thousands of miles. Cultures, most of whom we have no evidence that they had any ability to pass oral history one to each other, and yet all of them, for some reason, who worship these dragon gods, aiming towards the end of their calendar as the return of when their God will return and the earth will enter into a new age of elevated mankind. Most of them also, by the way, would speak in terms in their own mysticism, as I was talking about last night. We are heading towards a time where men are going to become demigods, according to the transhumanists, but they say the same thing in their own language. Man is going to be elevated. We're going to have a new golden age. The gods are going to return, and men with gods are going to be blended. It's all part of their prophecy. They were probably right. It is coming. And now our technology has caught up to our mystical dreams, and we are about to give birth to a new form of man. That is a prophecy of the Kume Sibyl, who predicts the arrival of, in the end times, of a divine son. But who was the Kume Sibyl? Well, she was the most important prophetess of Apollo. She is the most famous of the Pythians. A prophetess, a Pythian, by the way, is what the Apostle Paul cast a demon out of in the New Testament. Now, interesting question. Why would a demon-possessed prophetess of Apollo do that? For the same reason the New Age movement quotes from the Bible. By the way, whenever, I can tell you this, I know this from experience, whenever these spiritual forces know that they have come up against a power greater than they are, that's you, in Christ, and you're in their community, they won't try to defeat you. They'll try to make the community somehow think they're somehow joined to you. So, but you know why? You're a fisher of men. Well, believe me, they are too. They are fishers of men. These spirits are fishers of men. And so they will join or try to make the appearance of having joined in order to draw people away into mysticism. And it's happening right now. And yet, for some mysterious reason, the Kume Sibyl is in the Sistine Chapel at the Roman city, the Vatican City, and she is holding a position here of honor among the Old Testament prophets. Michelangelo, who made the famous paintings there in the Sistine Chapel, he left a secret behind that I've never heard anybody ever talk about. I'm going to show it to you right now so you can follow up on it on your own. But Hoggart, he left us something here very important. Count the digits on the left hand of the Cumae Sibyl. Now her thumb is inside the book just like it is on this finger. And then you count her digits, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the fifth one is bent under or cut off, which could have even more significant occultic meaning. She's a 6-digited prophetess. Wonder why Michelangelo did that, because that dates back to the Watchers. That dates back to the offspring of those rebel angels that rebelled against God. But it also directly connects to Apollo, who is known as Nimrod, and the fact that he probably was an offspring of the Watchers. If we get time, we won't have time probably, but if we get time, I'll show you in the Old Testament book of Genesis where it says, and Nimrod began to be. And the Hebrew word there is Gibborim. Nimrod began to become a Gibborim, an offspring of the Watchers. Well, anyway, there she is. And yet, this woman who is held in a sacred place of honor there at the Vatican City, what is it that her prophecy that's contained on the Great Seal of the United States of America, what does it say? Well, the divine son who comes of the Sibyl's prophecy is to be spawned of a new breed of men sent down from heaven, what we talked about last night, as he receives the life of God, since he's heroes with gods commingling. This is taken directly from Greek mythology, where there was a marriage of the gods and mankind giving birth to the demigods. This is Watcher technology. This is what we're going to do in our technology. Now, let me give it to you quickly. Here's the prophecy that's encoded on the Great Seal. Am I talking too fast? The Great Seal. Now, this is the prophecy that's on the Great Seal. Now, the last stage, by Cumae Sibyl sung, has come and gone. And the majestic roll of circling centuries begins anew. That's where we take the phrase, a new order of the ages, the novus ordo seclorum. Okay, what's going to happen when this new world order is born? Justice is going to return old Saturn's reign. Bible scholars will tell you this is talking about Satan. Saturn is the equivalent of Satan in biblical theology. Is going to return old Satan's reign with a new breed of men sent down from heaven. Only do thou at the boy's birth, in whom the iron shall cease, the golden race will arise. Befriend him, chaste Lucina, 'tis thine own Apollo reigns. So now we know who is prophesied on the Great Seal of the United States to return. This is from which the prophecy is taken. He shall receive the life of gods, and see heroes with gods commingling, and himself be seen of them. And with his father's worth, that is Saturn's worth, he will reign over the world. Assume thy greatness, for the time draws nigh, dear child of God, great progeny of Job, that is Jupiter or Zeus. See how it totters, the world's orbed might, earth and wide ocean, and the vault profound, all see enraptured of the coming time. But why should Christians care about a Sibyl's prophecy on the Great Seal heralding the return of Apollo? Because the Bible identifies the god Apollo as the same spirit, verified by the same name, that will inhabit the political leader of the end times new world order. 2 Thessalonians, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. This is the Greek word apollyon, which is the Greek's way of saying what we call Apollo. Apollia, Apollyon, Apollo. Revelation 17:8 ties the coming of the Antichrist with the return of Apollo. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition, Apollia, Apollo. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. This phrase is held by many theologians who believe that it pointed to either a spirit or a personality that existed on the earth, was dead at the time or gone at the time of the writing of Revelation 17:8, but who will return in the latter days to either be or to possess the Antichrist. Both the Bible and ancient records and the prophecy on the Great Seal tell us it is Apollo. He is equivalent to the Egyptians as Osiris. In the Old Testament, he is called Nimrod. If we had had time, we would have talked about this question, but how could Apollo, Osiris, Nimrod possibly return in flesh or spirit as Antichrist? But it has to do with the Kume Sibyl's prophecy of a new breed of men.
Is there any verses on the topic of UFOs and aliens in the Quran, or is this just a man-made phenomenon?
UFOs and aliens. The Quran does not explicitly affirm or deny the creation of other entities. The Quran is ambiguous, and one could say that some verses seem to suggest other creations besides us. And one could say that those verses don't suggest other creations beside us, they simply are generic. So, in the end of the day, Islam, the Quran, our religion is not explicit about other life forms. However, some people have interpreted some verses to imply that there are other creations of Allah. Did they live before us? Did they live after us? Are they living contemporaneous to us, i.e. right now? Are they living in some other entity? Allah knows best. But perhaps, I want everybody to be very clear, do not misquote me. What am I saying? Be very precise, because wallahi, one of the biggest problems is the speaker says something and then the audience or somebody goes and puts on the internet, oh, Shaykh so-and-so said this. Be very precise. I am saying the evidence of the Quran is ambiguous. Nothing is explicit. But perhaps some evidences can possibly be interpreted to suggest other creations of Allah. Call them aliens, call them UFOs, this is not besides the point. Has Allah created others besides us? Were they before us? Were they after us? Are they in other galaxies? Is besides the point. Are there other creations? Perhaps, yes. What are some of those verses? Well, let us begin with the first verse. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise be to Allah, the Lord of every single alam. What is an alam? An alam is a world, or an alam is an entire species unto itself. And Allah is the Lord of every single creation. So obviously classical scholars understood alameen to imply man, animals, jinn, angels. But from the very beginning, Allah is saying, you're not alone. There are other creations I have. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Another verse that is interpreted in this manner is that Allah says in the Quran that He has created the heavens and earth, وَبَثَّ فِيهِمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ, and He has scattered creatures throughout the heavens and the earths. Now one could say He has scattered creatures in this heaven and this earth, but the verse is the plural, samawat. He has scattered creatures, وَبَثَّ فِيهِمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ. Then He says that وَهُوَ عَلَى جَمْعِهِمْ إِذَا يَشَاءُ قَدِيرٌ. If He wants to, He can cause these species to meet, to come together. Meaning they are not together right now. So this could be interpreted. Now others will interpret it in another manner, and they will say that, well, Allah is talking about the day of judgment. He will gather them together on the day of judgment. This is also valid, but the language could possibly be interpreted that He has scattered creatures throughout the heavens and earth, and if He wants to, He can cause these creatures to meet. This is also linguistically possible. And of the evidences that, in my humble opinion, and I personally lean towards, I don't say UFOs or aliens, this is not very, I say I lean towards the position that was championed by Ibn Taymiyyah himself, more than 700 years ago. And Ibn Taymiyyah believed, or I should say he suggested, and he defended the position, that we are not the only creation of Allah, and that it is somewhat arrogant to assume that we are the only creation. Rather, Allah has created other creations, and He will continue to create other creations after us. That we are but one of the infinite creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is His position, and I support it, but at the end of the day we don't know for sure. I'll finish with
So in calling this press conference, I'm calling you because of the serious nature of the announcement that I'm about to make. An announcement on which hangs the future of this nation, its leaders, and the people of America. This is not the usual press conference, though I realize that you may only be able to use a very small portion of what I say if you choose to use it at all. However, I would hope that you record everything that I say, that it may bear a record either for or against you and me. It is written in the book of Ezekiel, when I say unto the wicked, you shall surely die, and you give him not warning, nor speak to warn the wicked from his wicked way, to save his life, the same wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at your hand. But if you warn the wicked, and he turn not from his wickedness, nor from his wicked way, he shall die in his iniquity, but you have delivered your soul. It is in this spirit that I make this announcement. In a tiny town in Mexico called Tepoztlan, there is a mountain on top of which is the ruins of a temple dedicated to Quetzalcoatl, the Christ figure of Central and South America. A mountain which I've climbed several times. However, on the night of September the 17th, 1985, I was carried up on that mountain in a vision with a few friends of mine. As we reached the top of the mountain, a wheel, or what you call an unidentified flying object, appeared at the side of the mountain, and I was called from the wheel to come up into the wheel. 3 metal legs appeared from the wheel, giving me the impression that it was going to land, but it never came over the mountain. Being somewhat afraid, I called to the members of my party to come with me, but a voice from the wheel spoke, saying, "Not them, just you." I was told to relax, and a beam of light came from the wheel, and I was carried up on this beam of light into the wheel. I sat next to the pilot. However, I could not see him. I could only feel his presence. As the wheel lifted off from the side of the mountain, moving at a terrific speed, I knew I was being transported to the mother wheel, or the mother plane, which is a human-built planet a half a mile by a half a mile, which the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us of for over 60 years. The pilot, knowing that I was fearful of seeing this great mechanical object in the sky, maneuvered his craft in such a way that I would not see the mother plane, and then backed quickly into it and docked in a tunnel. I was escorted by the pilot to a door and admitted into a room. I shall not bother you with a description of the room, but suffice it to say that at the center of the ceiling was a speaker, and through this speaker I heard the voice of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad speaking to me as clearly as you hear my voice this morning. He spoke in short, cryptic sentences, and as he spoke, a scroll full of cursive writing rolled down in front of my eyes, but it was a projection of what was being written in my mind. As I attempted to read the cursive writing, which was in English, the scroll disappeared, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad began to speak to me again. He said, and I quote, "President Reagan has met with the Joint Chiefs of Staff to plan a war. I want you to hold a press conference in Washington, D.C., and announce their plan and say to the world that you got the information from me on the wheel." End quote. He said to me that he would not permit me to see him at that time, but he said that I had one more thing to do, and when that one more thing was done, I could come again to the wheel and I would be permitted to see him face to face. He then dismissed me, and I entered the small wheel, and the pilot, whom I still could not see, moved the craft out of the tunnel and took it up to a terrific height and maneuvered his craft that I might look down upon the mother wheel, and I saw a city in the sky. With great speed, it brought me back to earth and dropped me off near Washington, where I then proceeded into this city to make the announcement. After I awakened from the vision, it seemed to vanish from my mind. However, it has been a secret, above top secret, in the United States and in governments around the world. But more recently, governments have decided to expose to their populace the reality of the existence of these so-called unidentified flying objects.
Do you think it's time now to let everybody know about this? Are we ready for this?
Whether those in power think it's time or not is immaterial or irrelevant, because these wheels are now being seen over the major cities. And when human beings of intelligence can look up and see these phenomenon, or this phenomena, how can you keep hiding it in the midst of thousands upon thousands of people now seeing them? And in this modern age of technology, with recording instruments in a telephone that is now in the hands of millions and billions of people, then when they show up, the people film it. So now, what can you say now? You could say it was swamp gas yesterday. You could say it was a balloon. You could say it was all these explain away techniques of masterful liars and artful deceivers. But today, it is time, and now it is being made manifest. So somebody has to answer the question, what are they? Why are they there? Why have they been over all of the atomic installations, not only in America, but all over the world? Why has the power from these so-called unidentified flying objects been able to nullify the power of rockets to go up in case there is an atomic warfare? The power that these machines exercise, which America has not fully seen yet. I think it is more than time that the populace of our planet should know where these wheels are from, what their real purpose is, who is behind it all. Then the people can either accept it or reject it.
Are you in your position going to ask the American government to open the files like other countries have done around this extraterrestrial or so-called wheels phenomenon? What is going to be the official position of Islam in the United States?
It doesn't make any difference to me whether they open them or don't open them, because it's going to be so evident. These wheels will be seen by the American people by the millions in a few days.
started to turn. He said, did you know that in the ancient Zohar, the 700-year-old Zohar, which is one of the most important books of Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, magic, he said, did you know that besides, their commentary on the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, that in a section called Viera section, which includes a subsection called Signs Heralding Mashiach, that is, the coming of the Messiah. He said, did you know that these ancient Jewish scholars 700 years ago predicted that their Messiah would arrive in the year 2012? 700 years ago. I said, I had absolutely no idea. I did not know that. I'd never read that, never heard that anywhere. He said, do you have a copy of the Zohar? I did. I had an electronic version. He said, open it on your computer. He opened it on his computer. We both sat there on the phone. He took me, read me through, and the reason I had read past this is because obviously it's in the Jewish calendar. It's in the year 73, what is also called 5773. But in our Gregorian calendar, that begins in the new moon in the year 2012 and ends a year later in 2013. And it was this fantastic prophecy. And look at what they say here. In 2012-2013, the kings of the world will assemble in the great city of Rome. This is important. And the Holy One will shower on them fire and hail and meteoric stones until they are all destroyed. That prophecy goes on to then say that from that point forward, the Messiah will begin to make himself known to the nations of the world. Why might this be important? Because the Orthodox Jews rejected Jesus Christ as their Messiah, and in our theology they are prophesying the coming of the Antichrist in the year 2012. And whenever he comes, they are going to accept a false Christ. Do you understand that? Why this was important to me was because as JR was reading me through the Viera section of the Zohar, what was ringing in the back of my mind was an even older prophecy, an 800-year-old prophecy that was also made by what I consider to be an occultic figure, a Catholic mystic. A man by the name of Malachi O'More Gare, also known more commonly to the Catholics as Father Malachi. And Father Malachi, 800 years ago, went to Rome to provide an update on his diocese to the Pope. And while he was there, something seized him, according to the story. Something came on him, and he began to write down what is now famously known as the Prophecy of the Popes, in which he listed every pope that would ever exist from the first to the last, beginning at Celestine II to what he called Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman. But look at what he said about Peter the Roman. He'll arrive during a time of tribulation, and then the city of 7 hills will be destroyed, and the terrible judge will judge his people. So an 800-year-old Catholic saying almost exactly the same thing as 700-year-old Jewish mystics. They were prophesying the coming of their Messiah, who in our mind is the Antichrist. This guy is prophesying the last pope, the 112th pope. Well, guess what? Benedict XVI is the 111th pope. The very next pope, according to this prophecy, is Petrus Romanus. And last week, people were arrested who were plotting to assassinate the pope. At any moment, you could have the fulfillment of these pagan prophecies. Now, I don't put these on a par with the Bible, but why is this happening? Why did one culture, Jewish mystics, believe their Messiah would arrive in 2012, and a Catholic, and by the way, even some apocalyptic Catholics believe that the final pope will be the false prophet of apocalyptic literature, that the false prophet on this side will point the world's religious communities to the political figure on this side who is the Antichrist. And you're seeing the culmination of two, one 700 years old, one 800-year-old prophecies that are coming to pass at this very hour. Well, what happened then was a pattern for me began to emerge. And with my background in exorcism, this had special interest to me. I wondered, what are these spirits up to? What are they doing? What do they believe? Since spirits know something, both the good ones and the bad ones seem to know something about dispensations. What are they plotting?
Recent discoveries have uncovered dates, agendas, and goals that connect the Jesuits to a massive deception for the purpose of a multifaceted end-time delusion. The design of this deeply hidden plot has been to change the perception of the masses regarding the authority of the Bible, the correct shape of the earth, the layout of the universe, and the Creator's position in it. This change in perception has prepared minds for the overwhelming delusion to come upon the world under the first woe, the fifth trumpet, prophesied in Revelation chapter 9. This delusion will be a demonic attack under the pretext of an alien invasion. Reportedly, Vladimir Lenin observed, "A lie told often enough becomes the truth." This quote is discovered within the belief of most. The Earth is a sphere. It spins through space while orbiting the Sun, hurtling thousands of kilometers an hour inside our Milky Way galaxy. So ingrained is this belief, if one speaks of the words flat Earth, listeners snicker. The mental reflex of a flat plane from which a person might fall into an infinite space creates this disrespect. A globe Earth, because unproven, is pseudoscience, yet believed worldwide and passed from generation to generation, and any who question it is mocked and ridiculed. After the Vatican hosted a 5-day conference on extraterrestrial life, Catholic priest Jonathan Morris appeared on U.S. Fox News to answer some questions.
How would it change the Church's teaching then? Well, if you consider for a moment, if you determine that there is extraterrestrial life there?
Well, one thing would be fascinating would be not only extraterrestrial life, but if it were extraterrestrial intelligent life forms. That would definitely make us go back and say, maybe our understanding of perennial truths needs to be updated. Now, the way we look at it is this. It's not about whether or not God was the creator, but rather how he created. It's not a question of whether original sin, this Adam and Eve story, is true or not, but our understanding of how that played out. So it's growing in our understanding of perennial truths.
I think that's an interesting explanation there. And I think also if it were determined, Father, that would be an earthquake, would it not?
It would be. It would be, and especially if the Vatican were involved in accepting that.